Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Steffy Forrester walked off the plane at LAX, her heart full with hope and sadness. The Los Angeles skyline shimmered in the distance, a familiar sight that had once comforted her but now served as a reminder of everything she'd lost. A tiny kid stood beside her, grasping her hand tightly, his eyes big and curious, and his smile tentative. Her newly adopted son was named John, and his narrative of loss paralleled her own in ways she hadn't fully comprehended. Steffy, at 32, was no stranger to heartbreak, but this chapter seemed different, raw, uncertain, and filled with a silent aching that refused to go away. The station was bustling with travelers, but Steffy walked through it like a ghost, her gaze fixed entirely on John. His small fingers held hers as if she were his sole anchor in a world that had already been cruel to him. At the age of 5, John had experienced more loss than most adults. His biological parents had died in a car accident 2 years previously, leaving him to bounce between foster homes until Steffy, moved by her own sadness, decided to open her heart to him. She didn't intend to adopt when she fled Los Angeles 6 months ago, fleeing the devastation of her marriage to Finn and the crushing weight of her family's expectations at Forrester Creations. But something about John's calm resilience, his ability to grin despite his anguish, appealed to her. She saw herself in him, a survivor with wounds that no one else could see. As they exited the airport, the California sun hit her like a spotlight, revealing the tiredness carved into her face. She hadn't slept well in weeks since the adoption paperwork were finalized. The decision to return to Los Angeles. It had not been easy. The city had too many memories of Finn, Dr. John Finnegan, the guy she adored with all of her heart, the one who promised her eternal love until their world fell apart. Their marriage had been a tornado of passion and commitment, but it had shattered under the strain of tragedy. The miscarriage of their unborn child, which occurred late in the pregnancy, broke something in both of them. Steffy had wanted to fight for their marriage, to hold on to the love they'd created, but Finn had withdrawn, disappearing into his work at the hospital, leaving her to grieve alone. When she left LA, she told herself she was going to find herself again, but deep down she knew she was fleeing the ghost of what they had lost. John tugged on her hand, bringing her back to the present. "Steffy, are we home?" he inquired, his voice low but clear, his brown eyes seeking her face for confirmation. She knelt to his level, stroking a lock of dark hair from his brow. "Yeah, buddy, we're home," she replied, attempting a smile. The word felt strange to her tongue. Home wasn't the enormous Forrester mansion or the elegant penthouse she'd previously inhabited with Finn. Home was a notion she was still working on, piece by piece, for herself and John. The trip to the Forrester estate was quiet, except for John's occasional questions about the city. Steffy responded as best she could, pointing out locations and telling anecdotes to keep him distracted. But her thoughts were elsewhere, entangled in the certainty of meeting Finn again. She hadn't told him she was coming back or about John. The last time they spoke, 6 months ago, it was a quick, uncomfortable phone chat that ended with Finn stating, "I just need time, Steffy."
Time.
As if time could erase the agony of losing their child or the divide that had formed between them, impossible to cross. When they arrived at the mansion, Ridge Forrester was waiting at the door, arms wide open. Steffy's father had always been her rock, but he couldn't keep her safe from the storm she was about to face. "There's my girl," Ridge murmured, his voice warm but tinged with anxiety as he looked into her worn eyes and the young boy by her side. "And this must be John." John hid behind Steffy, grasping her leg. She gave Ridge a glance that said, "Give him time," and he nodded before moving back to let them in. The mansion was as beautiful as ever, with the aroma of fresh flowers and the echoes of a family that had survived numerous tragedies. But to Steffy, it felt like a museum of her past, a place where every corner was a reminder of Finn, of their laughing, conflicts, and love. That night, after snuggling John into bed in the guest room, Steffy stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. She wondered if Finn was out there, working a late shift at the hospital, saving lives while his own was deteriorating. She had not meant to see him so soon, but fate, as always, had other plans. The next morning, Steffi accompanied John to the park, thinking that the open space might help him feel less stressed. He dashed ahead, chasing a butterfly, his laughter a unique sound that warms her heart. She was watching him, deep in concentration, when a familiar voice ripped through the air like a dagger. "Steffi." She stopped, her breath seizing in her throat. Slowly, she turned to face Finn. He stood a few steps away, his doctor's scrubs crumpled and his dark hair slightly longer than she recalls. His piercing green eyes, which had once looked at her with such adoration, were now clouded with shock and something else, perhaps remorse or guilt. "Finn," she whispered, scarcely rising above a whisper. She wanted to leave, hide, and defend the fragile world she was creating with John. But there was no avoiding this moment. He moved closer, his gaze shifting to John, who was now playing on the slide, oblivious to the tension. "You're back," Finn replied, his voice full with emotion. "And who is that?" Steffi's heart pounded. She hadn't planned for this, hadn't practiced explaining John to the man who had once been her everything. "His name is John," she stated calmly, despite the turmoil within her. "I adopted him." Finn's eyes widened, and for a second, he appeared to have been punched. "Adopted?" he repeated, as if the word did not make sense.
"When?"
"Why haven't you told me?" "I didn't know how," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know if you'd care." The words lingered between them, harsh and weighty. Finn flinched, and Steffi regretted it immediately, but she couldn't take it back. It was the truth. She had felt abandoned, left to bear their shared anguish alone as he buried himself in work. "Of course I care," Finn said, his voice low and almost imploring. "Steffi, I've never stopped caring. I wasn't sure how to change it. I had no idea how to fix us." She looked away, her eyes aching from unshed tears. "You didn't try," she stated quietly. "Finn, you left me to deal with it alone. I lost our kid, and then I lost you." He took another step closer, close enough for her to detect the familiar scent of his cologne, which used to linger on her garments after they'd spent the night entwined in each other's arms. "I'm sorry," he murmured in a hoarse voice. "Steffi, I was drowning. I didn't know how to assist you when I couldn't even help myself." She wanted to shout at him, telling him how much his absence had hurt her, how it had drove her to leave LA in search of John, to try to reconstruct her life from the ashes. However, she didn't. Instead, she gazed at John, who was sitting on the grass and watching a ladybug crawl across his finger. "He's why I came back," she explained. "He needs a home, Finn. A real one. And I'm going to give it to him." Finn followed her gaze, his face softening as he saw John. "He's lucky to have you," he remarked calmly. "You're going to be an amazing mom." The words hit her like a wave, bringing back memories of her pregnancy, their shared plans for their kid, and the nursery they'd painted together. She gulped hard, forcing the memories down. "I'm trying," she explained. "But it's hard. Harder than I expected." Finn nodded, his gaze never leaving John. "Can I meet him?" he inquired, his tone apprehensive. Steffi hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep John safe from the uncertainty of Finn's presence in their lives. But another part of her, the one that still loved him despite everything, couldn't deny it. "Okay," she finally replied. "But go slowly. He's been through a lot." Finn approached John cautiously, crouching to his level. "Hey, buddy," he murmured, his voice soft. "I am Finn. I'm a friend of Steffi's." John looked up, suspicious yet fascinated. "Hi," he whispered quietly, holding the insect in his palm. "Do you enjoy bugs?" Finn gave a genuine smile that made Steffi's heart hurt. "Yeah, I do," he replied. "What kind is that?" They spoke for a few minutes, Finn's easy charm bringing John out of his shell. Steffi stared, her emotions entwined in a web of love and terror. She wanted to believe Finn could be a part of their life again, but the scars were still fresh, and the trust had been broken. Steffi and John established a precarious routine over the next few weeks. She took him to therapy to help him process his grief, enrolled him in kindergarten, and attempted to restore some feeling of normalcy. Finn began to appear more frequently, at the park, the coffee shop near Forrester Creations, and at the estate after Ridge invited him over for supper. Every time, he was cautious and considerate, never pushing too much. He bought John tiny gifts, such as a toy car and an insect book, and John gradually warmed to him. Steffy, on the other hand, found every interaction with Finn to be a delicate balance. She recognized the man she'd fallen in love with in the way he spoke to John and listened, truly listened, to the boy's story. But she could also see the man who had failed her, who had chosen distance over love when she needed him the most. She was unsure whether she could forgive him or accept him back into her heart. Finn unexpectedly arrived to the estate one evening, after John had fallen asleep. Steffi discovered him on the patio, gazing out at the city lights, much like she did on her first night back. "You shouldn't be here," she remarked, her tone stern. "I know," he replied, turning to face her. "But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you something." She crossed her arms and braced herself. "What?" "I apologize," he replied, his voice breaking. "For everything. I apologize for not being there when you needed me, for allowing you to go through it alone. I was afraid, Steffi. I was afraid of how much it hurt, and I figured if I just kept moving and working, I'd be able to outrun it. But I was mistaken. I lost you, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she brushed them away. "You don't get to just say sorry and expect it to fix everything," she informed me. "I needed you, Finn. I needed my hubby, and you weren't there." "I understand," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "But I am here now. And I'd like to be here for you, John, if you'll let me." She shook her head, her heart torn between hope and terror. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she told me. "I don't think I can let you in only to lose you again." Finn drew closer, his eyes begging. "Then let me prove it," he answered. "Let me show you that I've changed. I am not asking for a second chance right now, Steffi. I'm only asking for a chance to be a part of your and John's lives. I'll accept whatever you're prepared to give." When she looked at him, she saw the man she'd loved, the man she'd lost, and the man who stood in front of her now, flawed and damaged but trying. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of optimism, but it was drowned out by the weight of her sadness, dread, and uncertainty. "I need time," she admitted finally. "This is for me." Finn nodded, his eyes filled with unshed tears. "I'll wait," he replied, "as long as it takes." As he went out into the night, Steffi remained alone on the patio, the city lights blurring through her tears. She had no idea what the future held, or if she would ever be able to restore what she had lost with Finn. But for now, she had John, and he was sufficient. He was her motivation to keep trying, battling, and hoping, even when her heart felt like it would never heal. The days stretched into weeks, and Steffi dedicated herself to being John's mother. She took him to the beach, taught him to ride a bike, and read him bedtime stories about heroic knights and distant nations. The shadow of Finn lingered, a continual reminder of what might have been. He maintained his promise, showing up in modest ways, dropping off a toy for John, texting her to check in, never pressing too hard but always there, a constant presence she couldn't ignore. One afternoon, while she watched John play in the backyard, she found herself reflecting on the future. Not the future she had envisioned with Finn, but a new one she was creating with John. She wasn't sure if Finn would be a part of it, or if she could ever trust him again. But for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine that she may be able to heal, not for Finn, but for herself and the tiny boy who had become her world. The melancholy persisted, a gentle aching that will always be with her. But so did her love, the love she had for John, the love she had once had for Finn, and the love she was developing for herself. And in that love, she discovered a glimmer of hope, a cause to keep going, one day at a time. Steffi knelt in front of him and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, baby. We're home." Yet the phrase seemed flimsy, too light to bear the weight of everything that had transpired. Inside, everything seemed the same, Finn's books still stacked by the fireplace, framed images trapped in time that no longer existed, and half-forgotten toys under the couch. However, Steffi felt as if she were going through someone else's life. Every footfall resonated with ghosts. John walked toward the wide window that overlooked the ocean. "It's so big," he muttered, putting his hand against the glass. Steffi smiled slightly. "It is. It is the ocean. It goes on forever. As my mother said, heaven does." Her heart sank. The boy had lost his parents in a car accident 2 years before she met him, and his narrative echoed too much of her own anguish. That shared wound had pulled her to him, and she believed she could restore the love he had lost. But as she stood there now, surrounded by memories she'd attempted to avoid, she wondered if she had expected too much from both of them. She hadn't left Los Angeles in nearly a year, since the night she and Finn said their goodbyes at the airport. She'd convinced herself it was only temporary, that she needed space and time to recuperate from the devastation that had engulfed their life. But time had not healed. It had hollowed her out instead. Finn had remained behind, immersed in work, attempting to keep their world solid for the children. But when Steffi contacted him months later from a quiet street in Paris, her voice quivering, telling him she had found a child who needed her, Finn waited for so long that she assumed the call had been dropped. "Are you adopting him?" he eventually inquired, surprise and sympathy blending in his voice. "I have to," she replied. "He reminds me that I can still love." "But what about us?" There was no easy answer. Steffi felt like a stranger in her own life as she returned to the house where they had promised to live forever. That night, after John had fallen asleep nestled against her side, she went out to the porch and wrapped herself in Finn's old sweater. The air was cold, and the stars were obscured by a fine mist. She heard the faint sound of the water again, followed by the sound of footsteps, as if drawn from memory. "Steffi." She turned. Finn stood at the edge of the deck, his figure illuminated by the porch light. He appeared older and wearier, but his eyes, those same deep, loving eyes, sought hers with a tenderness that tore something inside her. "You're here," she whispered. "I heard you were back." He approached, but not too close. "You did not call." "I didn't know what to say." He nodded and swallowed. "You look different." "I am tired." Silence stretched between them. There was only one sound. The waves. "I saw the boy," Finn replied softly. "John." Her breath caught. "He's sleeping. He looks happy. He's been through a lot. So have you." Steffi glanced away, her gaze fixed on the dark horizon. "I believed leaving would make things simpler. But it just made the emptiness louder." Finn stepped beside her, his voice soft but forceful. "You didn't have to carry it alone, Steffi." I couldn't remain. Every corner of this mansion reminded me of what we had lost. The terror, the danger, everything that kept taking bits of us. "I know." She gazed at him, tears in her eyes. "And you were always so strong. I couldn't watch you pretend everything was fine while I was falling apart." He shook his head, emotion flashing across his features. "I wasn't pretending. I was holding on. For you. For the children. I didn't know how to be here anymore," she continued, her voice shaking. "So I ran. And I found him, John. He needed someone. Perhaps I needed him more." Finn leaned out, hesitant to touch her arm. "You have a huge heart, Steffi. But you keep giving it out without leaving enough for yourself." His words wounded her. For years, she had defined herself via the people she cared about, her children, her family, her relationships. Every time she lost someone, she rebuilt her life around the next.